My name is Avi. I'm the co-founder of Weavr, and today's topic is of a special interest to me. Just before Weavr, I was with Helosys, a mobile API platform company. And think of it as Firebase, but for enterprise customers. And one of the best things that we did out there was to embed ourselves into communities, developer communities, answering genuinely questions that people were asking, uh, anything about mobile apps and mobile platforms. And before we realized, we had an unofficial group of ambassadors who were talking about us, who were actually answering about us as well. And we attribute a lot of our success before acquisition and post acquisition to these group of ambassadors who took us inside companies like Maersk, Goodyear, Sandisk of the world. We became the platform of choice against a number of big companies. We can only imagine what would have been the case if we had run that program as a real program. It was absolutely not thought through as an ambassador program or a champions program. But well, today I have two fantastic people with me, Luca and Leith. They have built communities, they have built champions programs. Some of them are starting the program. So it's great to have you both, Luca and Leith, with this program. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
What we'll do today together, we'll try to demystify this making of a champions program, share our experiences, and we have people in this event right now who I know have done things around it. So feel free to ask questions, share your experience as we speak. We'll try to limit the Q&A towards the end, but if there is something which is absolutely related, please do send a message to me onto this privately. So let's get started. Luca, would you like to introduce yourself? Tell us about what you are doing currently and your experience around building communities and programs like these.
Sure. So, hi everyone. My name is Luca. I am the global community manager at Camunda. I'm based in Berlin, and Camunda is an open source software company, and we have quite an international community. So over the past 3 years, I've built a support program for a network of global meetup organizers at Camunda. And right now I'm working towards launching the Camunda Champion Program end of April, which is super exciting. And yeah, I'm really excited to be here today and to share some of my experiences and also to hear about yours, Leith. And yeah, thank you for inviting me today.
Certainly great to have you here.
Yeah, hi, I'm Leith. I'm currently the senior manager of community at Snowflake. Recently joined. I'm on my second week there. I previously built communities at companies like MongoDB, Automation Anywhere, NetApp, Realtor.com, and Yahoo. And everything from champion programs to forums and user group programs as well. We're really happy to be here to talk about this really important topic and super excited to have this discussion with everyone.
Awesome. Great to have you, Leith. So you have a unique experience of building the programs and joining some programs into that. So we'll talk about that later. But let's get started with the most burning question, which is what exactly is a champions program? Kind of in your opinion, Leith, maybe you can start on that and say, this is what I call a champions program.
Yeah, definitely. I think a champions program is a program that rewards and recognizes your most active and enthusiastic community members. So it's highly focused on going out there, recognizing, the fans of your brand, the fans of your product, and really, connecting with them, building a relationship with them as, advocates for your brand, advocates for the community as well. They are essentially the voice of the community. And you want to kind of harness that energy that they have talking about your brand and bring it back to the organization, to build your product and to better serve your community.
Very good.
Yeah.
Yuka?
Yeah, so actually I can just support what Leith just said. So I always see our champions or our future champions kind of as the extended developer relations team at Camunda. So they're really supporting the community by writing content, contributing code, organizing user groups. But I think it's super important that there's not one size fits all. So every community has different strengths. And I think we really want to value that. So I kind of see it as a partner program where you really reward people, but yeah, and that you also give really back to the community and to your most active contributors.
Very good. And when you say reward, is the reward an integral aspect of this program? Or in what form do you generally see the rewards? Leith?
I think, rewards can come in many shapes and sizes. I think everything from the recognition element of it, helping somebody build up their skill set, or their profile in general, through things like providing them with recognition on your forums, at award ceremonies as well, providing them with opportunities to contribute to blogs, contribute to sessions like this one, for instance, within meetups and user groups and speaking opportunities. But also, as well as providing them with, special access to product, things that just make, whether it be a developer program or whether it be, kind of a B2C program, and you're kind of releasing a new product to the world and they get access to it first. I think that just provides a level of excitement and exclusiveness to the program itself, where people can actually jump in and get a sneak peek at the product. So it can come in many shapes and sizes, but mainly it's around kind of providing them with that high level of recognition, and that special access.
Is that your experience as well, Luke?
Yeah, definitely. For us, I think it's the same. And I think it's also like a lot about visibility, just that, for example, people get badges, or yeah, that they have special swag that they can wear. So really that they're seen as an expert in the community, and that also that other people can recognize them. And also with rewards, I really like to do with like any community initiative, also to get like the community's input. So if I build a program, that I really ask the members, like, what is it that what you actually want, and really get their input so that the program is shaped by its members. I think this is also one crucial part of building champion programs.
Awesome. So when you are, especially Luca, you are starting a program very soon. It's going to be launched end of April, I'm assuming,
Yeah.
right? Are you setting up goals for the program, which are like quarterly goals or 6-month goals? How do you define these goals for your company as well as for ambassadors? Like, is there a specific metric that you look at uh, as a success of the program?
Yeah. So yeah, I think it's really, really important to set goals prior to the program, also so that you can see, okay, what kind of impact does this program actually have. So I think this is always something that you should ask yourself first, like, why do I even set a program up like this? Do I even need it? And setting the goals. So for us, it's really like, for now, I think about three main things, and then I think the goals will evolve over time because the program will change over time. But for us, it's really about identifying our super users. So we have a good idea about our super users and our most engaged users, but this program really gives us kind of a formal way identifying those people, and then really be able to reaching out to those people. So that is one of the main goals. Then for us, it's really about giving back to the community. So really giving credit to our contributors, because they put in so much work into the community, which is really awesome. So we really want to give back to them. And yeah, then it's a lot about engagement. So we really hope that this program will create kind of an incentive for engagement. So those are our main three goals at the moment.
That's great. And you have run programs. You started the program at MongoDB as well. Could you talk about how you set up the goals for the program, both for the company as well as for ambassadors?
Yeah, definitely. I think that what really helped in that process was a phased approach to actually launching the program. Starting off with some some early bird members to the program, some early adopters of the program, and really speaking with them prior to go out and going out and really announcing the program, wide, on a wide scale, really talking to them, understanding, what your goals are. I mean, there are many times where you set goals and the members might say, you know what I mean? We really not a huge fan of something like that. And then you can shape it and then you can work with them directly. And Luca touched on this just a little bit in when we were talking about rewards and kind of understanding what they want.
Right.
And I think it's the same for really setting goals, is really understanding what they can achieve, what they would like to achieve, where they would like to engage. But I agree with Luca entirely that it's highly focused on understanding what the business will need from your champions as well, and setting those expectations for your champions so nobody's surprised when they come in. We're expecting you to do 1, 2, 3, but also kind of really focusing on the community element and really giving back to the community and how we can enable our champions to be better representatives of all of our community members.
So what I understand is for the ambassadors, it's like, okay, you are a part of this program. We will give you these, special early access and a lot of recognition, but there is no real, this has to be done kind of thing. I'm assuming that's not a great way to run an ambassador program, right?
Yeah, I think it's safe to set expectations. I think it's safe to work as a team and set, team goals. And I think it's also okay to set criteria for requalification, for instance, if you have an annual program, for them to rejoin the program next year. So you're basically setting the parameters. You're telling them, if you really enjoy this program and you'd like to requalify for next year, here's what we look at for in that requalification process, which should motivate them, for those that really enjoy the program and want to continue within it, should motivate them to continue to engage at that level. But in no way, I mean, do we say you must, you know what I mean?
Of course.
I don't think that, we want to motivate everyone. I think even, if someone was an employee or a paid employee, you must is never really a great way to
Of
approach
course.
it, right? It's always great to motivate someone through explaining the goals and what you're trying to achieve very clearly.
Yeah, I think it's so important what you just said, because I think setting expectations is really important, because otherwise people don't really know what they're aiming for. And I think people always like a bit of security, like they need to know what they should do in a way, but of course not being super strict about, or at least this is how we build up our program, that we don't say, okay, you have to organize 10 meetups and give 5 presentations, because everyone has different strength and we really want to support those strengths instead of just having it super static program. So I think that's completely right what you just said.
Well, this is absolutely close to my heart as well. So as I mentioned, in the previous startup, it was an unofficial program. People were doing things on their own and became our ambassadors. We never called them an ambassador program, but they were doing things. Now, this is a burning question that has come sent to me as well, people who could not attend. Uh, what are your thoughts? Maybe you can start with that, Leith. Thoughts about reward-based transactional approach of some of these programs. There are tools around it versus building a program which is sort of trust-based, right? I think there's a mix of both. But for somebody who is just getting started, right, and they don't have a program or a huge community, what would you think of as a starting point?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always difficult when your community is still growing. But there's always those early adopters of, and I think in early stage companies, there's always people who adopt, kind of that first customer, that first paying customer, that first group of paying customers. You're always going to find champions there. And I think a champion program doesn't have to be 1,000 strong. In fact, sometimes you want it to be smaller so you can really be high touch and really focus on them. So starting small, there's nothing wrong with that. I think you want a great understanding of your community first, and that would be the only reason why you might hold off on starting a champion program extremely early on, until you have a better understanding of who your community members are, who your audience is for this group as well, and how you want to engage on what channels are best for your product. But other than that, I think that go small. Don't focus on, I need to have 10 or 20 or 30 champions right now. Have 1 or 2, which are your kind of your early adopters of your program, and build from there.
Great point. So basically start with a couple people who are totally aligned with you, are your well-wishers, true well-wishers, and then build upon that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Luca, how about you? What do you have any advice for somebody who's just starting a program or starting a community even? Uh, what would they want to do? I know you have some experience in organizing meetups across the world in a way, right? And would love to kind of chat about that. How was that coming in play?
Yeah, I think it's exactly what Leith said, that you don't always need like a super big community. I think it's more about those engaged people and really looking out for those engaged people. And even if they're at the beginning just a few, that's totally fine, because they can give you like awesome feedback to build your program, to build your product, your community. So I think you can just like start small. And I think this is also what we did at the beginning with meetups when I kind of started the meetup organizers program, really like reaching out to our most engaged users, reaching out to them and asking them about their experiences, like what they would wish for. So really being in contact with them, because I think for me, it's really about relationships. I mean, it's all about relationships, and it's really about caring for the people and really listening to them. And yeah, so I think this is how you basically start every community program, really looking for those super users and then reaching out to them. And as Lee said, you don't need to have like 100, but it's fine to start with a super small group.
Very cool. Do you have any, when you start the program and you are in the perfect boat right now, Luca, you are going to launch this program, I'm sure there are things that you need to prepare for, apart from finding those people, for the sustainability of this program, continuation of this program. How do you really prepare for that? Do you have any specific things that you can talk about, saying, well, you need 1, 2, 3 to at least build the first level of program onto that?
Yeah, so as I said, I'm super excited to launch the program, because I think there will always be those things that you're just not prepared for. And I think this is always when you set up something completely new, you're never prepared for everything. But of course, I mean, for me, it was a lot about research at the beginning, just looking at other programs, how are they doing it, also talking to community members. So for example, we will have a feedback session with like I would say like some of our top or contributors. So we will get feedback from them and really ask them about, okay, what would you wish for in such a program? Is that even appealing to you? Is that something you would like to join? So I think that always helps. And for me, what you said or you ask about, I think it's really, you need like one dedicated person, if it's like a community manager or whoever, maybe a dev advocate or whoever that is, but really someone who is taking care, because as I said, it's really about relationships, and relationship building just doesn't happen overnight. You really need time and you need to put effort into building relationships. So I think you really need like a dedicated person who builds up the program, who's really in touch with the different people. And as I said, you also need time, of course, because I think without time, you just cannot build relationships. So yeah, I think the research part and then just talking to people really helped me a lot when now building up the program.
And when you launch it, what's the step one, right? Like what are you going to be launching it as, saying, hey, this is what we will be doing? Could you talk about that?
So as I said, we have like a small group of people that we have kind of a feedback session with, who will kind of beta test the program before we officially launch it then end of April. Then we will get feedback from them, and then we have our annual user conference end of April. So we will launch it there and get the word out there, and then let's see how many people will apply. I mean, this will be an exciting step, because I could also imagine like a lot of people also say, oh, am I even a champion? So probably I really have to encourage also people to apply and to say, okay, I totally see you maybe in this program. So that would be a first step for me, to reach out to contributors, also to show that we really appreciate what kind of work they're doing within the community. And then, of course, when the first round of champions onboards, I mean, we talked about rewards. Of course, there will be like some rewards, like they get badges. There will be a Slack workspace for our champions so they can connect with each other, and really trying to build a community, like a champion community. I think this is like the first step, but now it's a lot about feedback, getting feedback from people and then adjusting to the feedback from them.
That's great. Leith, what's your take on step one and the preparation that you need to, get a program started? Starting from identifying the right folks, obviously, but beyond that, what are the things that you need to be in line with to make a program which is not going to just falter right away, kind of thing? And I'm thinking about not very large companies, but small companies as well.
Yeah, definitely. And, I kind of touched on this as well before, but getting an understanding of your community, and Luca touched on this as well, is having those conversations, building those relationships, understanding, you know, who are your community? Who are the people that are out there that are interested in your product, and what do they want to see from the community? And I think that's absolutely essential, even prior to identifying who are the right people to join your program. It's identifying who the community are, also identifying what your business objectives are for running such a program as well, because that might define who your champions are as well. Some people might, some champions might be better at certain things, and if they don't align directly with your business objectives, that could be a problem as well. So you want to make sure that you're aligning that as well. You want to make sure that your champions are also great representatives of your community. So as you gain that understanding, then you want to look towards your champions and say, are these a great representation of our community currently? Are these a diverse group of champions as well? You want to make sure that you're always focusing on these elements and make sure that they are representing the folks they'll essentially be speaking for to the company as advocates. So I think that step one is always definitely understanding the community.
Great. And I'm going to touch back upon this whole KPI thing, and I see Mary Thingwell also a part of this group. So I think she is a champion in talking about KPI. So maybe I'll put her on spot just in a few if she can talk about that. But the idea is to really, how do we define community KPIs? Are a well-known topic right now from the developer space and everyone. But talking about ambassador KPIs, program KPIs, is there any difference? And how do you generally think of that as your small segment of community members who are now really taking the weight forward for you and talking about you? And Leith, maybe you can start. And if Mary, I don't know if you're ready for that, but maybe you could talk about that as well. Share something.
Yeah, sure. I think when really designating, the KPIs for your ambassadors and how the champion program is performing in general, I think you want to look at the level of engagement that they're having across all your community, and that's external and internal. A lot of this will end up being qualitative measurements. It's not always going to be something that's quantitative that you can look at, that you can actually assign a hard number to. You know what I mean? It's not going to be always something you can tie directly to sales, for instance. A lot of it is going to be what relationships have been built and how strong those relationships are now, and how do we move forward with those relationships, and what various conversations have led to, which then can be tied to all the stuff that I mentioned before regarding whether that be sales or whether that be. But you never want that to be your initial kind of primary.
Of course, yes.
Right. And I think that on the quantitative element, you can definitely look at things like content, pieces of content, and how much views and how much engagement you're getting in that content, looking at social media and those posts and kind of what is our reach, you know what I mean? Because essentially also, as Luca mentioned, is they are an extension of DevRel. They are an extension of the company, right? And DevRel very, often is measured by reach and by the conversations that they're having and the engagement that they're receiving. So that same measurement would apply as well, I think, to champions.
Awesome. Luca, do you have anything to add on to the KPI side of it?
There's Mary. Yeah, I can totally agree with that. I think for us, it's also now because we didn't launch the program yet. It's also a lot about, okay, how is the program even perceived? Like, is the program perceived well? How many applications do we get? And then, of course, there's the next step, like looking at, for example, engagement metrics, how Leith just mentioned, and then also kind of more internal metrics. How do actually the champions like the program? And for example, running a survey with the champions, how they feel within the program. So I think this is really important as well.
Awesome. And Mary, thanks for chiming in. I couldn't resist the temptation that you are here and we are talking about KPIs. So,
you're putting me on the
well,
spot here, Avi.
yeah, well, let's just get some wisdom from Mary as well. What do you think of this? I mean, I know we have talked about DevRel qualified leads. We have talked about, I looked at something called CQL, which was, and then want to talk about this whole ambassador program, which is segment of this. And how do you look at that from a KPI? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so DevRel qualified leads, for those of you who don't know, is a way to track the connections that we're making. So it plays heavily into the qualitative side of things that Leith, you referenced, but making sure that we're keeping track of, hey, we passed a community member off to marketing for a blog post, or to recruiting for one of our engineering leads, or different things like that. I think that's a really helpful way to capture some of that qualitative relationship building side of things that we're doing. As far as ambassador programs specifically, I'll lean heavily on what Luca's been saying, because she's actually putting together our program, and just the metrics that she's come up with have been fantastic. And as she mentioned, a lot of our process right now is figuring out, how do we know that this first round is successful, and then how do we continue to iterate on that? What are the number of applicants? What's our goal for a number of applicants per quarter? And some of that is then also looking at our workload and going, how many applicants can we actually handle per quarter? How many champions can we handle per quarter? How much work is this going to be? But then also looking at the quality of the applications, how many people are getting in, and possibly in the future moving toward, how many people are entering the program versus how many people are we having to turn away because people are now so excited that this is a place that they really want to be.
What's the term of, or the duration of this program that you generally keep for the ambassadors? Is it like a yearly thing where you requalify and bring in new ambassadors? Luca, if you could talk about what are you
for
thinking?
us it will be so for us it will be a yearly.
Is that a common thing, Lit? 1 year kind of a program?
Yeah, I've seen multiple programs where they're not yearly programs, but and I've worked on various programs like that, but eventually they do end up being yearly programs, because I found that it's probably the healthiest way to run a champions program, because and then you go back to being able to establish that requalification criteria and sending a set period to achieve kind of the goals of the program and to constantly refresh the program as well.
That's great. Now, once you launch the program, is the promotion of this program in a way that this is a program that is going on? Is it only through the community, or how are you thinking about promoting this program external to the community? What I mean by that is that there is a community aspect of it, but your community probably is living in many other places too, maybe in the customer side of the world, or on Hacker News, or on somewhere else. How do you generally do this today, or are you even thinking about promoting external to the community? Lit, can you talk about that?
Yeah, sure. I think when you're building out a champions program, you have, let's say you have 10 champions, you have 10 people that can go out there into all those channels that you mentioned and talk about it. So I think that first and foremost, once you get everything in order and the champions are really excited about the program, they'll be excited to go out there and speak about it as well on all these channels, right? So you want to make sure that you're highlighting, of course, what are the high priority channels, and that your champions have a great understanding of those channels. And let them go out there and really talk about it. Let them share it on LinkedIn. And you want to do your part as well. Work with your social media team. Work with your various content teams to really publish content that's going to get the word out. Establish maybe a landing page as well that you can, guide people to, that's going to draw, this is the information on the program. This is how you become a champion, and this is what you'll get in return. I think that you also have a part in really creating content with your champions as well. Things like videos, things like highlighting your members, things like doing spotlights for your champions and posting that content, podcasts, for instance, and having them on as guests on those podcasts, I think can also contribute to getting the word out, across many channels.
Luca, how are you thinking about, starting, launching and then promoting it to other people?
Yeah, actually, for us, it's exactly what Leith just said. Yeah, I think for us now, because we didn't launch the program yet, it's really about those community contributors that we are reaching out to those first, also personal conversations and people that we just know that they're super invested in the community. And then I think exactly as Leith said, so I mean, the champion program is there for people to evangelize and to go out there and yeah, you can also create resources for your champions, so that makes it even easier for them, for example, that they can post it on social media, because I mean, it's also something they would like to share because it's kind of a recognition. And then, of course, I mean, in the internal channels, or not internal channels, they're external channels, but for example, our forum, I mean, they will have badges. We announced it at our conference, of course, all of that. But I think for us, because we didn't launch the program yet, it's really about more the community. And maybe then at some point as a next step, you can also go like to broader channels, but definitely using social media and using all your like channels to promote it is great. And then also that the champions itself themselves, that they promote it.
Right. One of the things that we believe and we successfully saw was to think of your colleagues and employees as as an extended ambassador program. They are not rewarded or badged the way you would think of a program, but I think they are the best ambassadors you have, right? Whether it's a small team or you're a big company. So we have realized that taking whatever you are doing as a DevRel team and then bringing it on to an internal Slack channel, for example, for the ability to share it externally through that network of employees has really worked out well. And I was wondering if you are thinking on lines of saying, well, if these are the 20 ambassadors into my program, their content, their videos should be shared back into the employee pool or the colleagues pool in the Slack channel, so they can then further share it. So it's a big network that builds in. Are you doing something on those lines, or any thoughts on that?
I think what you just said is super important in terms of also seeing your employees as your community, because they're part of your community. And I think also in terms of creating awareness and promoting the program, I think like the employees are the perfect source kind of. I mean, your CSM team, the sales team, they're all in touch with people, with customers who are doing an awesome job. So I think regarding promotion, you can also rely on employees, and you should definitely get the word out about the program to your internal community, to the employees, because they're the perfect source to tell you, okay, there's a really, really great community member. Maybe he or she would be a good candidate for this program, and then recommending this person. So I think this is really important.
That's great. Have you gotten any experience, or are you thinking on those lines, or any thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. I think that building internal champions is going to absolutely be essential to growing the program. I've even, seen programs where internal champions are rewarded, they are recognized, they are treated as if they were members of the program, receiving all the same perks.
Question, yeah.
You know what I mean? Where they're, provided, they go to all the, for instance, at events, when everybody's, of course, is back in person, events, going to all the receptions, going to all the parties that you have for your champions, or those special events, being recognized at the events as well as a member of the program. So you can have, various programs where you have champions of the champions that are internal folks that are working very closely within that program. And you rely on them to promote, your program as well, as Luca mentioned, but you also rely on them to support, whether that be at a technical level or whether that be just through, getting things done, you know what I mean, and taking down, kind of any roadblocks that they might, encounter as well. So, I think internally champions are going to be absolutely essential.
I like the idea of treating your colleagues who are contributing the same way as the ambassadors are, and then giving them the same sort of rewards and abilities to. Now, some of them are already out there because they have an early access to the program already, but there are multiple other things that they could be rewarded with. And I think it's a great way for smaller companies as well to think of it, because now you have 1,500 people with you who could become, some part of that could become your internal community that takes up this program. Awesome. I think we have 20 more minutes. I have a couple more questions, but and there are two questions that have been sent, so I will ask them soon after this. But do you have any advice, do's and don'ts, when you are looking at a champions program? Something that you got burnt with, maybe, and saying, "Hey, never do that." Leith, maybe you can start.
Oh boy. I think that making assumptions, and we've talked quite a bit about, understanding the community, understanding, what the community's needs are, and what your champions would like to see from a program like this. I think initially when you're planning things and you're presenting them, you're gonna make some assumptions, but don't be surprised when those assumptions are completely wrong. You know what I mean? So you can make those assumptions, but don't put anything really, into motion, based on assumptions. I think speak to the community, understand, you can present those ideas, but get feedback on them, I think, first and foremost. And sometimes you'll make those assumptions, you'll move forward with it, and then months later you'll realize that that's the problem with why they're not engaged, or why the Champions program isn't very healthy. I think another one is start off very strong with focusing on who your, and I touched on this already as well, who your community members are, and that they're a strong representation of your community. There's going to be, of course, there's going to be members that are easier to bring on board, but do those members really represent your community? Make sure your community is diverse, inclusive, and really focus on them representing the community in a healthy way.
Great. How about you, Luca? Anything that you think should not be done, from first principles to whatever you've experienced earlier?
Yeah, I really like what you just said about the assumptions, because I think this is something super important. Always, I think this is also something that I experienced a lot with the Meetup Organizers program, always checking in with them. Okay, how is it going for you? And really then adjusting to it, because often we think like, oh yeah, this is going super well, or people really love that. And sometimes I thought like, oh yeah, people will really love that. And then it's like, okay, they maybe don't love it that much. But I mean, that's totally okay. And that's also why like feedback sessions and everything is so important. And like building those relationships and always reaching out to them one-on-one is super important. And I think also maybe one thing, because especially with champion programs, I mean, I didn't launch it yet, but I think the Meetup Organizers program is also a kind of a champion program. And of course, you want people to do certain tasks, or you want to keep them engaged and everything, but maybe at some point it can feel like a lot of work for them, because of course they also have like a full-time job, and really being mindful also with their time and being mindful with their resources, and don't overloading them too much with always like asking them for more and more and more, because in the end it should be a fun program and should be fun to stay in the community, and they shouldn't be burned out after being for 1 year in your program because they had to work so much. So I think this is maybe also one advice that I also think for myself, like when building this program now, that I would like to take into account.
Very good. Well, it's kind of related as a question, but do you have any examples, Leith, for anything that has worked out absolutely great, which you would do all over again? One or two things that you saw in your programs earlier.
Yeah, I think, there's so many good experiences, I think everything from, having your champions, leading events and speaking at events and leading whiteboard sessions at events have been, hugely successful, especially after you've really built up the program and after you've had a chance to really get the word out about that. I think getting them highly involved at events has been some of the most rewarding experiences that I've had, within champions programs. Also getting them involved with, when employees are creating content, if you can do a mix between employees and, what I mean, and your champions, and building content kind of as a team, I think that's been extremely rewarding. It's always great to see, members of the community come together with members of your company and really create content together. That has been really great fun. But I think the most rewarding thing is always, creating I think what I love the most is having a landing page, having a destination, having a place where you can really highlight everyone, highlight their content, and really focus on what they're creating in the world. And I think that's going to be the most rewarding thing. The day that that page launches, throw a party, because I think that's just the best thing you can do.
Well, this one is absolutely related. That came in as a question from someone who couldn't join today. But because you talked about content, the question is about what kind of, it's a small team, what kind of content have you seen as the most, I would say, outreach driven content which has impacted the most? Is it the videos that they should be spending time on in terms of tutorials and videos? Or is it about the blog posts everywhere? And they are thinking about a guest author program as well.
I think for me, at least, it's all of the above. I think there should be really focus across, I think, all types of content. And again, go back to the champions, go back and focus on where they want to focus as well. Some might be better at creating kind of on-screen videos and might be better at that. Others might be better writers. So I think speak with them, think, understand where they feel more comfortable creating the content itself, and then work towards those strengths. Some of them might want to are great writers, but they want to get better at video as well. Provide them with the resources to actually create that content as well. But focus on both, but don't force it onto your champions if they're not comfortable making that content.
Got it.
Yeah.
Luca, what have you seen in terms of the content which is most useful? Or I'm assuming, first of all, Leith, I think this is absolutely right. Everyone has their own little, I would say strength, right? Mm-hmm. Whether it's speaking, writing, creating videos. So you can't really, but as a company, are you focused on one side of the content, or is it all? Especially if you're a small company, what would be the first step? Luca, if you can answer that as well.
Yeah, so for us, it's really, of course, we are not a super small company, so, but we focus on both. We have video content, we have blog posts, and I think especially on our blog, it's always great to highlight community members. So not always having like only Camunda content there, but really giving like community members the opportunity to write a blog post, or maybe they even published a blog post before and then they can just turn it into another blog post. I think this is always really, really great. And yeah, I think in terms of what works well, I think sometimes you also have to try it out, because especially when you're a small company, I think like video content always works really well, but it always depends on the target group. Who is your target group? What do they like? So I think there's no really one size fits all, and you really have to try it out, especially when you don't have that many resources. But yeah, I think like getting the community members involved is a great opportunity to create more content. And I think I would totally agree with what Leith said, that you shouldn't force it on people, because there are some people who really like to write a blog post, people who really like to do a video, or some people who are super active on the forum and they're really, really good in answering questions. And yeah, so I think it's really about, so supporting the strength rather than forcing people to do a specific task.
Great. Well, we have a very interesting question from Spencer here. And I think it's something to do with the adherence and guidelines for the Champions program. And this is not about building only, but how do you really handle a program or members of the program who are no longer users of your product, for example, but they're still contributing? Do you have guidelines around saying if you're not using the, you are not using our product anymore. What do you do with that? Do you continue with the program, or what are the guidelines that you would put in?
That's actually, I would be super interested if you answer that, Leith, because this is actually something I am also wondering about, because we didn't start our program yet. And then, for example, also when for someone isn't as active anymore because maybe something happened, you never know. So, and how do you go about that when, for example, someone is not as active anymore, or as you said, Avi is, for example, not working with your product anymore?
Yeah, I think that that'll start with the criteria. I think when you set the criteria for joining, or how you qualify, if you state number one, you must be a user of our products, and that's kind of the number one thing, you must be using our technology. That sets a really clear idea for everyone that, if I'm not using the product anymore, most likely I can't continue to be a member of this program. However, you will find certain products that, for instance, have a community edition of their product, which is, for instance, free to use. And if your champion decides to continue to use that, or otherwise finds a way to use that in their private endeavors, what I mean, outside personal endeavors, outside of their work, I think that would qualify them to remain within the program. So it depends on how they decide to continue to use the product. If there is no way for them to use the product, I think really stating it very clearly in the criteria to join or to requalify, you know that they have that understanding going in that they probably won't be able to continue within the product, within the program, excuse me. And I think that's also going to be, it's very important that you create an exit strategy as well. So when somebody needs to leave the program, you want to make it as smooth of a program. You don't want it to just be, okay, we're done, that's it. You can still continue to engage with them through like alumni programs and things like that, with creating kind of a secondary group of former members, because that person might eventually go back to a company where they are using your product again, and you want to be able to engage with them and bring them back into the program. So keep in touch with them even when they exit the program.
Great point. And this is another question which is interesting. What do you call them, and have them call um, themselves ambassadors, champions, or do you prefer not to have the name attached to that? I think the point that is coming across is saying that I'm an ambassador might bring in some biased feel for the audience, right? So should you not call them?
So our program will be called Camunda Champion Program. So they can kind of decide if they want to call themselves a champion or not. But yeah, we, for example, also have a hoodie where it says Camunda Champion. So basically, yeah, we call them Camunda Champions, but yeah, I think it's really up to them. Maybe some people also say like, okay, I come on that champion. That is not really something that I would call myself, which is also totally understandable, I think.
Leith, what's your take on that? First of all the folks who were in the program, would they name themselves on LinkedIn's of the world with a specific title, or was that not very common?
I've seen it where, many people, and you provide them with the tools. I mean, I think many MVPs or champions or there's so many titles. Again, going back to the title, question, there's so many titles out there that you can name. And it can be quite a process. Believe me, I've gone through it. And I think that, as long as they're very proud of it, I think many of them will use that within their LinkedIn description. They'll post, if you create a badge, they'll post a big badge. You can even create a certificate, which allows them to share it directly, so they can, put that on their LinkedIn profiles. So I think, yeah, many will include that in the title even, and on their social profiles. Regarding naming, I've seen things that are like branded naming. For instance, you have the NetApp A Team, where it's not, A Team comes with, we're the best of the best. We're the most, the expert, program, and they are experts in NetApp A Team. So you'll see many with that branded kind of approach, to naming it, not champions or MVPs. And then you'll see champions, MVPs, but regarding ambassadors, I think some people will kind of pull back from using ambassadors or advocates, because you do have developer advocates within your company maybe, and that might cause some confusion. And ambassadors, as you mentioned, might seem a little more biased when you name them to ambassadors. But If it fits in with your brand, if it fits in with your company's message, I don't see anything wrong with using those.
Right. All right. So I think we pretty much done with the questions here. And I think this is great learning for me personally as well as we start our own ambassador program at Weavr. And I think we will think about what we call them, ambassadors, champions, A-team. So this is great.
Thank you so much for inviting me. And it was really interesting talking to you both.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Take care, guys.
Thanks, everyone.